Bill here. And yeah, you got a nice background there. Very good. Perfect. Okay, so do. Right on. All right. So your book is coming out in just a couple days, right? Are we
That's,
or are we
yeah,
well into your book?
it's a ebook right now. You can get it at realestaterevolution.org. So you can get the ebook and the printed book is in progress, probably 3 weeks.
Okay, cool. All right, so we'll be sure to mention that right away when we start in here. And are we ready to go? I'm ready to go.
Let's roll.
Okay. All righty. All right, folks. Here we are with Patrick Palzkill, author of The Real Estate Revolution. And we're very, very happy to have you on the program here. So we'll just jump right in. And hey, first of all, thank you for making the time, Patrick. And where are you calling from today?
I'm just south of Boston, Norwell, Massachusetts. I've lived
Excellent.
in Massachusetts the last 30 years. My wife's from here, and I've got four adult kids that grew up here. I grew up in the Midwest, though, so
Uh-huh.
I've been across America, seen a few things, and I've been in the real estate and mortgage and finance business for 40 plus years. So
There we
that's
go.
kind of summed up in the book, um, life lessons of what to look for and what to look out for.
There we go. And you are the author of Real Estate Revolution. Can you jump right into that? That's fantastic here.
Well,
What can
yeah,
you? Yeah, yeah.
it's a book. It focuses on a lot of different aspects of real estate, whether it be purchasing real estate or if you look at the 250th anniversary of America,
Hmm.
you look at the revolution. If I asked you what the revolution of America was about, what would you say that was about?
I would say that was about throwing off tyranny that we didn't want. I think that's what I'd say in a nutshell.
There's a lot of that, and it's been marketed a lot of different ways, whether it be throwing off tyranny, from
Hmm.
England or the taxes, the tea tax, especially in Boston, which is so rich in history,
Hmm.
But I think one thing that's overlooked and not really mentioned very much, but it may have been the biggest real estate deal ever. When you look at America
Uh-huh.
and the way it was founded, and you look at other real estate acquisitions that are going around the world, whether it be Venezuela or Ukraine or whatever, you know, real estate
Okay.
has always been the bedrock of, what people need, what people want, what people aspire to, because, it's where they live, it's how they make a living, it's who you surround yourself with. So a lot of that is encompassed in the book,
Hmm.
but it's really focused on home buyers and home sellers and the changes that are going on. And especially with your expertise in AI, you understand this with AI
Hmm.
and sustainability and real estate, how it all folds together. And 2026 is a really important year. And that's why I think it's important to share what we've learned.
Hmm.
People like yourself and myself that have been around and not really influenced by AI. We're able to use
Hmm.
our own brain. God only
I,
knows how much we've been brainwashed, but I think it's important to share and do it in an economic way. And that's a big part of
okay.
what the book's about.
So you started life growing up on a 1,000-acre farm, and now you've got one of the largest mortgage platforms in the country. So, um, yeah, what actually sparked your book? What was the light bulb moment for you when you decided, hey, this needs to be written? What was the tipping point for you?
Well, I've been writing it for 40 years, Bill. To
Okay.
be honest, I went to graduate school in Madison, Wisconsin, and my master's thesis was on land usage, and
Hmm.
really how a city is structured and built. And with AI and with robotics now, I think people really have to question how American and even you look at the European cities. And what I think a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of these cities are already dead and they don't know it because
In what way?
the way their infrastructure is set up. I mean, even
Mm,
Boston, one of the greatest cities in America, or New York. You look at when the pandemic came around, and there's garbage everywhere, there's rats everywhere, and you look at the educational system of some cities like South Chicago that are totally destroyed, and they're burdened by these huge pensions and all
mhm,
that with an AI robotically assisted city can be eliminated. A lot of those overhead costs, and you can't fix something that's broke. You're going to spend too much time nickeling and diming it when you can start over with a new sustainable city that's structured in such a way that you're not inhibited by all these old taxes and tariffs and excise taxes. If you spent it on building a sustainable city, that's what chapter 10 in the book is about.
wow. All right. This is really revolutionary stuff here. Now, you talk about fiduciary responsibility in a strong way. It's a moral line in the sand. When did that all become personal for you? Uh,
Well, for one
yeah.
thing, it's the law. It's my law. But
Okay.
if you look at America and capitalism, it's make as much as you can, forget about the cost to society, forget a cost, the cost to humanity. It's how can I make the most money? So that's capitalism. And people compare that to communism. But my point from a fiduciary standpoint, and this is critical part of the book,
Okay.
and that's why I guess, you look at George Washington. A lot of people don't understand that George Washington used to fight for Britain, when they
Yes.
first started out, and he switched sides. And I'm not switching sides. I've always worked a lot with buyers, whether it be on the mortgage side or the real estate side, because in real estate, as you know, being a real estate person, commercial guy, that a lot of the power lists with the listing agent, and that's a big part of the book is the lawsuit that the National Association of Realtors has been a part of in Kansas City, Burnett versus the National Association of Realtors.
Hmm.
And a lot of it centers around fiduciary responsibility. And my definition of realtor or of fiduciary responsibility is you take care of your client's financial interest.
Right.
And when you look at what the National Association of Realtors, initially they lost and now they're appealing it. And that's, again, so important for home buyers and sellers right now. And what's pointed out in the book is that I give consumers battle cries and tools that they can make sure that their agent, whether it be their real estate agent or their insurance agent or their mortgage person or their investment stockbroker, that they're actually taking the consumer's financial fiduciary interest and putting it before theirs. And I think if you look across America, across the world,
Hmm.
that very few people talk about that. And if consumers stood up, and I really believe that's what the judge in the National Association of Realtor lawsuit is saying, is that what has been happening may be right or wrong as far as what a commission for a real estate agent consists of.
Hmm.
And it's very difficult to talk about because there's legal matters around it as far as price fixing with commissions and stuff like that. And I guess, the disclosures all over the book is there's no standard commissions, but you
Right.
got to understand how commissions work and what this ruling does to change that dynamic. And realtors may still make what they're making. But my position is I have an associate that I'm working with in London.
Hmm.
The average commission to sell a house, to buy and sell a house in London is 1.7%. You look at what the average commission, according to the National Association of Realtors, is in America is about 5.5%.
Sure.
So the market will determine it. But what this lawsuit was indicating was that the National Association of Realtors had a artificial barrier up that kept commissions high. And
I
so
see.
you understand how it is, and it
Hmm.
is complicated. And again, it's spelled out in the book, but it used to be when I started 40 years ago that really both realtors worked for the seller because that's where the commission was.
Yeah.
And so half the commission went to the listing agent and half the commission went to the buyer's agent, but the buyer's agent was a sub agent of the listing agent. So their
Okay.
fiduciary responsibility was with the seller, that
Hmm.
they were responsible for getting the seller the most amount of money. And the big C change is that with this new NAR rule now, that
Hmm.
instead of the listing agent listing for, let's say, 6% or 5% commission, um, now they're able to list it for like 3%, but the buyer is responsible for paying for the buyer's agency commission. And when you
Right.
got home ownership, and this is the tsunami, Bill, that
Hmm.
one of the main messages out there. I've never
Hmm.
been sued in my life.
Right.
And I always tell my people that work for me that, the best thing to do is to avoid a problem. And that's one of the main reasons for the book is so that consumers can be educated. Because when they go out there and when a buyer goes out there, these new buyers that are under 40 years old, they are going into a meat grinder that they have no idea what's coming because there's sharks everywhere in the water and these consumers are uneducated. And who out there, name one person that's out there educating young buyers, home buyers, on what
Hmm.
to look out for when they go into the shark tank. Because
Hmm.
there's plenty of sharks in there, and I can guarantee you that the person buying the house is going to be the least knowledgeable because they're going to come up against the buyer's agent, the listing agent, the buyer's broker, the listing broker, the mortgage broker, the insurance agent. All of them are going to have more knowledge than that home buyer coming in, and they could be shackled for their
Hmm.
life. They're talking 50-year mortgages. I mean, that's
Yeah.
coming out
Yep.
for a solution. And
Hmm.
that's really what the book points out is there's different ways to do that
Hmm. Hmm.
and avoid all those fees and be able to have a place to live.
Pat, what surprised you most while you were writing this book? What really hit you the hardest as you were putting this together? Um,
Well, when you look at the solutions proposed, you
okay.
know, and again, like I say, a lot of it boils down to fiduciary responsibility. You can sit around and say nothing, okay, but then you're really ignoring your fiduciary responsibility. And
Right.
I guess that's
Hmm.
what's most shocking is on a lot of things that it doesn't
Hmm.
get out there, and a lot of news that gets out there only benefits the people on top. When you really understand it, when you really understand what's in an interest rate and who's making money off of that, and you look at these young kids under the age of 40 and they can't afford a house and, they can't afford to start a family. And you talk about sustainability, you know, I think a lot
Hmm.
of people hear that word and the red flags go up one side or the other. And my
Hmm.
position from a sustainability standpoint is, that we're leaving something for our children, a planet and a system that can be sustained. And don't go off the rail. When you talk
Hmm.
about sustainability, again, I think
Yeah.
there's 5 or 6 or 7 different parts of that. A lot of people go right to energy, and I think
Hmm.
energy is only 10% from a sustainability standpoint. you know you have pollution, and a lot they go on to the carbon capture and stuff like that, things you can't see. So I think it's important to separate what's political versus reality. And that's the
Okay.
discussion because there's not right answers. And a lot of the book is getting
Yeah.
people to ask the right questions, you know,
Okay.
from a
Hmm.
lot of different people. And the other thing is a lot of people depend on AI. And what I say is don't depend on AI. Number
Hmm.
one, when you're buying a house, is always consult a real attorney. Okay. They're really your buffer because they have a fiduciary responsibility to protect you. And they know
Hmm.
where all the bodies are buried, you know? So that's one protection you have. But it's important to be knowledgeable on the overall scheme so that you can protect yourself. And
Right.
again, for a lot of people, it's the biggest investment in their life. So,
Right.
not to
Hmm.
mention location or condition or things like that. But with AI coming out, a lot of AI is trained on Reddit, which is people's opinion. And
Hmm.
what's happened the past 50 years really has very little to do with what's going to happen for the next 10 years. Because a lot of people now, and you hear this in the, kind of around the edges, but we could be entering a place of deflation.
Yeah.
No one in our lifetime has experienced deflation in the housing market, or the labor market or
Hmm.
God forbid, the mortgage market. Does
Hmm.
it really cost, if the rate's 6%, if you eliminated all the middlemen, could you take that 6% rate and shrink it down to 3%? In the book, I outline how that can be done.
Wow. Okay. Is that the chapter say that makes people the most uncomfortable, or industry professionals the most uncomfortable, you think, if they were to read this book? I mean, this is important stuff you're putting out there, and I believe it should have been said a long time ago, and you are doing it right now. So what chapter, what concepts in there are making people the most uncomfortable here, making them look at themselves in the mirror?
Well, it's just really being released right now, Bill,
Yeah. Okay.
and that's why I appreciate your broadcast and your time and
Yeah.
again, you're knowledgeable, you
Well,
know, but
sure.
I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of flack for it. Just the same as when George Washington switched from, fighting for Britain to fight for America. I'm sure he got flack for it. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody in politics gets flack for that, but it comes to speaking to the truth and fiduciary,
Mhm.
responsibility. It's important.
Yeah. Do you feel that's the essence of your book? That nobody is talking about fiduciary responsibility for the young buyers.
Well, there's a reason why, because
Mhm.
70% of the realtors in America didn't sell a house last year, so they
Mhm.
are hungry. So if you think that they're going to explain this to people so that they can't collect their commissions, I think that's like you say, that's the lawsuits that I'm trying to avoid for everybody. Because if you have an educated consumer, some of them are going to want to have a person there all the time and pay them that commission and get the commission from the seller. But if you're a first time buyer and you're trying to scrape up the down payment, and now you got to come up with an extra $20,000 because you signed a buyer agency agreement to get into an open house that you didn't know what you were signing. Now you're in a lot of trouble. And when that comes to fruition, and that 30-year-old goes to their parents and says, "Hey, this real estate company is trying to stick me with this $20,000 bill." People that are going to make out are the attorneys. You know,
Yeah.
you know what's coming. I know
Yeah.
what's coming. And that's, like I say, one of the big impetuses of the book is to say, hey, America, just ask the right questions. And yes, use AI,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
always check it with your realtor, always check it with your professional, and remember how that person is making their money because
Yes.
they are highly trained. Realtors train all day on how to sell, sell, sell. But as I mentioned before, how many people are training consumers to fight back and ask the right questions? And so for
Hmm.
$10, you can go on to realestaterevolution.org right now, and it's a tell-all. I call it it's the Big Short meets rich
Yeah,
dad, poor dad. Because
nice.
just like the Big Short that happened with the last crash, this could be very similar in different ways.
Hmm. Hmm. So, what do you see in the next, say, 2 to 3 years, and then maybe look out to 10 years? What do you see happening in real estate as far as traditional commission structures? And what do you see in the industry as a whole?
Well, I think the free market will take its place. And again, maybe 5-6% commissions are maybe that's a market rate because people, there's a lot of different things. But it used to be that people, realtors had to spend money on newspaper ads
Mm.
and magazine ads and printing all the paper. But now, if if the internet provides the information on what listings are available. And AI comes out with information on an appraised value. Again, it can all be very helpful, but
Hmm.
everybody's got to be playing, with the same deck of cards from that standpoint.
Okay. Do you feel it is the technology that's really putting an impetus to change here?
Well, hopefully,
Hmm.
because it shouldn't cost, average cost right now to buy and sell a house in Massachusetts is about $70,000. $70,000 when you go through all the hoops. But if you look at a land contract, okay, where you got a buyer and a seller, um, and the seller holds the note, you don't need private mortgage insurance. You don't necessarily, and again, I always recommend an appraisal, but if it's between two people, you can eliminate the vast majority of that $70,000. You can take it down to less than a couple $1,000s to do a land contract, and it accomplishes the same thing. So that's just an example of what's out there. But that's
Hmm.
going to be happening to a lot of different things if it's rolled out in a place where everybody gets a fair deal.
Right, right. Now, you described what's happening kind of behind the scenes, in the real estate industry in this country. There's consolidation, this massive lawsuit, you know, that's out there on the realtor situation. And then there's also massive companies controlling huge percentages now of transactions. Now there's some pushback from this administration on that, but the big dogs have been buying up single family homes for years now. Uh, the average homeowner, I don't think they realize this is happening. Now, how can you dig into some of this? Would you do that for me? Um,
Well, and
yeah,
again, that's in the book, but that's a
yeah.
good one. So now they changed the law now, so big companies like BlackRock can't buy the single family homes. What would have been better if they would have said that BlackRock has to sell everything that they own. That would
Hmm.
bring property into the market. Again, the 50-year mortgage, come on. That's the worst idea I've ever heard of. Portable mortgages, yeah, maybe. I don't think so. There are a lot of good government programs in Massachusetts. So if you go to mass savings.com, I believe is the website. There's a couple different financial websites out of there, but a lot
Hmm.
of it um, is it just makes the bankers richer, to be honest with you. It's not shrinking the margins. I just read
Hmm.
that like Goldman Sachs now to take care of all their government requirements, their underwriting requirements to make sure they're in compliance. AI is taking care of all that. So to sell mortgages on the secondary market becomes less and less expensive to do but they're
Hmm.
not shrinking their margin. And that all is reflected in the interest rate. So that interest rate is manipulated quite a bit. But a lot of it is to keep Wall Street in play. And that's what I'm saying. Again, my example back to the land contract is
Okay.
you don't really need Wall Street for that. And
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
insurance and taxes, again, I break that all down in the book from the standpoint of your real estate taxes. What's
Hmm.
involved in your real estate tax bill. Again, a lot of it goes to schools and the local pensions and fire
Hmm.
department and police. You know, if we could recognize our police force in our fire department, where we've got robots doing a lot of the work, they don't need a pension. So a
Sure.
lot of these costs can come down, and that's your real estate taxes. But Bill,
Right.
if I had to ask you, what are the top three things that you get from the federal government from your income tax bill? And again, we're about 36% now of our income
Sure.
goes to taxes. And we got in a revolution with Britain because we were at 3%. What are three things that you get from the federal government for your 36%?
Well, I tell you, I know based on the Constitution that helped start this country, defense is simply defending our borders is the prime responsibility of the federal government. But beyond that, uh, I'm kind of scratching my head. So, um, yeah, I mean, these are such important questions you're asking here. Um, yeah, uh,
So that's a good one. 170 billion. 170 billion we're going to spend this year on protecting our borders.
uh-huh.
Okay? And in the book, in my sustainable city scenario,
Hmm.
is we can build a city for 5 billion. We can build a city for 5 billion that's sustainable with very little tax overhead.
Yes.
With Optimus, with AI, and with the structure of the city. You look at snow plows and road maintenance. If you have if I mean it's a lot of
Hmm.
things that Elon Musk is already lined up, but people need to take action on it. Cities
Yes.
and states and the federal government needs to take action on it because my point that I made at the beginning is a lot of these cities are already dead. It's going to cost 10 times as much to fix these broken cities than to go outside of the cities in a rural area and build new. You can build new with this money instead of spending all this money,
Hmm.
1.5 trillion on defense.
Right,
Okay,
right.
military. You say that's your most important thing. Are you
Well, I'm
really
sure that
worried?
could be trimmed a lot.
Are you
Yeah,
really worried that New Hampshire is going to be invaded, Bill?
not at all. Not at all. I was just,
Like I say,
yeah.
by who? Who's going to come in and take over New Hampshire?
I was just pointing out that, yeah, one of the original responsibilities of the feds was to protect our borders. And how that is done, well, it can be done in an expensive way, which is what we have, or it could be done in an efficient way, which is, in my opinion, where we need to go. And it's what you're bringing out in this book, which is a revolutionary book, in my opinion. Um, I got a quick question on the banking industry here. So, um, the 30-year mortgage, it's everywhere, and now they're pushing for 40 years, 50 years. A long time ago, uh, we had a lot more lines of credit available for farmers, entrepreneurs starting out, um, and we didn't see these really banker friendly mortgages controlling the entire industry. Um, so I know there's room for improvement here. Um, what's your take on where the banking industry is headed and what consumers can do to kind of claw back, their fiduciary Um, worth. I mean, we're up against really, really large institutions here. And if you're a young person, like you'd mentioned, young couple going out to buy their first house or get their first mortgage, there's got to be some alternatives. So, yeah.
Well,
And in our,
and I point that out,
mhm,
Bill, and
yep.
that's one of the most revolutionary things. And what I propose is you got to take care of people's needs. You have needs and wants. I talk about needs and wants and borders. You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
um, you know, and not everybody should own real estate because with owning real estate comes responsibility. And when you take on that responsibility to build a community, there's value there. But you just can't let people come in and move into your house and start eating your food when it's something that you've worked for your whole life. I mean, they draw the line. It's nice when you're spending someone else's money, you know, but we are a nation of laws. But ways to eliminate this, another one is, title
Hmm.
insurance. Okay, this is not rocket science.
Yeah.
We have satellites that can outline every building, every lot line in the United States. It can be digitized. So you don't need to send a surveyor out there, spend $5,000 for a survey, because if you just look at the aerial and the LIDAR, all that could be done with AI. So you eliminate the title insurance, you eliminate the survey, and from a financial standpoint, to get back from your question, what I propose
Hmm.
is a bucket of money for owner occupied mortgages at 3%. So,
Mm.
not Goldman Sachs, not Canton Fitzgerald, who was part of the last mortgage meltdown, but a fund held by the government locked at 3%. And anybody that wants an owner occupied property can dip into this bucket at 3%. And it's all done digital. It's not rocket science. When I started, when I moved to Boston in 1997, I worked for PHH Mortgage, which was
Right.
part of uh, a company that's owned by some of the largest real estate companies in the country. And we did the automated underwriting. So instead of collecting all the paperwork and, you know, we collected here and we underwrote it, in a different city. And a lot of people push back on that, saying, oh, it's got to be personal. We always do it the old way. My point is all that is automated right now. The
Right.
government already knows your tax returns. The government really already knows what's in your bank statement. All that is electronic. And AI can read that so that when they underwrite your mortgage, they know 97% of the mortgages out there, how they're going to perform for the life of that mortgage. So if it was locked at 3%, not through some mortgage company, not through some bank, but there's a fund that's locked at 3% for life, that stabilizes the economy. And then, you have inflation at like 3%. So ideally, at 3%, you can pay down that mortgage, not over 30 years, not over 50 years, but what if you could pay it down in 15 years? This
Sure.
thing that you have to have a mortgage your whole life is what we've been programmed to. But again, you look at when the pilgrims come over here, how much time did the Native Americans, how much time and money did the Native Americans spend on their housing? They put up their
Right.
teepee, and they just live life. But now, you know, what percent of your what percent of your total income, if you look at taxes and your rent or mortgage, you got taxes
Hmm.
at 36%, and most mortgages are underwritten at either 28%, your mortgage payment should be 28, or your total debt should be 41% of your gross. Just
Hmm.
imagine if you had that money back in your pocket, if you didn't have to pay very little or lower taxes, and you had your house paid for, and
Yeah.
your real estate taxes were almost nothing, what would that do for the average American? That's what's possible. That's what's in
Right.
the book.
Nice. Nice. So here we go. What happens when consumers fully understand how the system works, which, as you pointed out, they really don't right now? What happens here? What are they going to say?
Well, hopefully they can defend themselves because, Bill, as far as the real estate deal, it's timing, location, 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 you know, um, just to be aware of what's out there. But I think, again, what, the first chapter in the book talks about the Johari window.
Okay.
Johari window is uh, discusses all the knowledge in the universe, and there's four buckets of knowledge. The first bucket is you know what you know. Okay, 2 plus 2 is 4. 4 plus 4 is 8. That's one bucket. You know what you know. Second bucket is you know what you don't know. Okay, pi r squared. What's that? I know it's out there, but I know I don't know the answer. So those are two buckets. The third bucket is there's things that you don't know that you know. Like I don't know how my breathing works or my heartbeat works, but I know it works. I don't know how it works, but I know that it's happening. And then the fourth bucket is things that you don't know that you don't know.
Mhm.
Okay.
Right.
And that's what the book is about, is to bring things up that you said, I never thought about that before, because you talk about, oh, location, location, location. Okay. For in Boston, oh, I want to be downtown. I want to be here. I want to be there, and I'm
Mhm.
saying that's all changing now. So when you talk about location, 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 if your in-house robot does your education, okay, instead of going to the school, a lot of people choose their house because they want the best schools. That was one of my top criteria.
Sure.
But what if schools don't matter? What if Harvard doesn't matter anymore? Because Harvard used to, in theory, now we're finding out it's not true, that they are a big depository of knowledge, or MIT, or a lot of the universities. Now you've got a robot in your house that's smarter than anybody else. So why should I live in a rat infested, over pensioned, crowded city when I could get the best knowledge in the world in my house or on my smartphone? Is that going to change location, location, location? And you look at downtown Boston, where they've
Mhm.
built all these high rises now in the seaport. Everything is $1 million and up. You know,
Yep.
is it smart to spend $20 million on a house on Beacon Hill that's 200 years old, and the plumbing is terrible, there's lead in the pipes? Is that a smart investment versus going out into the country and getting land for 10 cents on the dollar and having robots build you your dream home for nothing, 24/7? That's what we're looking at. It's not
Right.
going to be like it's always been, and that's why
Mhm.
there
Mhm.
could be deflation.
Mhm.
you know so
Mhm.
I guess my advice is be careful. Everything's going to be
Right.
different. Maybe everything does stay the same. I don't
Yeah.
think so.
Right. Um, uh, we're boy, boy, we need a couple hours here. I think we really do to get into
Well,
this.
that's why you get
It
the book.
yeah,
That's why you get the book.
exactly. There
And
we
you
go.
talk it over with your friends. You don't trust me. You don't trust anybody, you know, but think for yourself, and don't think that AI is going to bail you out. Because like I said,
Right.
if AI is built on, 25% Reddit, who now we're finding out is controlled by some sketchy, you know,
Yeah.
information, and God forbid, being a realtor, that if you depended on what's discussed in the bar rooms and Thanksgiving dinner, where people are getting their information, it's bad information. It's very bad information. So
Right.
that's what I'm not giving you answers. I'm giving you questions.
There we go. There we go. Okay. All right. Just one final one here. Your final chapter, it pivoted towards sustainability and building better cities as you get into some here. Why was that important to include? What's and yeah, can you follow up some on that? That's the future.
Well, there is some answers in there, I believe. When you look at the first nine chapters and understand what's going on with AI and everything we've been talking about on this call, you know, that there is an answer, and and there's plenty of money. There's plenty of money, Bill. You look at
Yeah.
what's going on in Dubai. They're starting out with a desert, and now they have buildings and structures and lifestyles that are better than the United States. America always used to be the best place in the world. You look at downtown Chicago, the best architecture in the world. When I was born in the Sears Tower was there, it was the tallest building in the world. Now we're not
Mm,
even close. And now, not only that, but we don't even have anything on the books. And in there, I talk about for $5 billion. Well, 5 billion, is a lot, but you can build the whole city
hmm
for 5 billion and
Yep.
start all these people, in a model that then can be transferred to these bigger cities and all around the world. We should be the best builders in the world, especially with what we have,
hmm
for a president that understands real estate. And now, again, this week, again, very controversial was, the dissolving of the Environmental Protection Agency, basically. So
Right.
you've got so many wild cards
Yeah.
with these
Mhm.
young people coming into the housing market, and you've got so many sharks in the water that they are going to eat them alive if someone doesn't look out for them. And that's what I see as fiduciary responsibility. And to get it out to as many people as possible for $10, you can buy the
Yep.
ebook. And if you
hmm
can't afford the $10, you shoot me an email. You go to realestaterevolution.org and shoot me an email, and I'll give it to you for free. You know,
Realestaterevolution.org. Patrick Palzkill. And can you and your website? Give it all. Give it out right now.
well,
People want
that's the
to.
website. It's not
Okay.
.com, it's .org,
Okay.
realestaterevolution.org. So you get the ebook there. Um, if you register there now and you want to buy the book, I'll give you the ebook for free. You know, because the thing is to get the knowledge out there. Um, I'll do classes. There'll be classes coming on. And if you want to buy or sell in Massachusetts, I'm a real estate broker in Massachusetts. I'm happy to coach you. I'm happy to do what you need to do to sell your house or buy your house in the most efficient way possible. But ideally, it's getting the message out there in the book. And um, I've always slept pretty good, but there's going to be a lot of people that are mad, especially realtors are going to be mad when this
Yep.
book comes out.
It's
But
coming.
you know, whether you learn it now or you learn it a year and a half from now, there's a lot of jobs that are going to be eliminated, and you better retrain yourself, or
hmm
I think you're going to be pounding sand.
hmm So that's revolution, realestaterevolution.org. Realestaterevolution.org. And here we go. You're bringing the future to us in book form, and it's coming whether we want it or not. Things are changing quickly out there. So for people who want to get a jump start on what's coming down the pike, realestaterevolution.org. And so we'll wrap it up here now. I think, Patrick, with any final words?
Well, I appreciate you reaching out, Bill. Like
You're
I
welcome.
said before, I think it's important that we get information that you have and that I have recorded, so that 10 years from now, people can look back and, be proud of what they've done and what they have, and they don't make the mistakes that they can. And again, the theme of the book is to find out some things that you may not have thought about or you didn't know that you didn't know. And once you know, you'll always know.
There we go. There we go. Yeah, with the AI coming in, boy, there's going to be there has to be a lot more transparency here. I've been interviewing people in the title industry. You nailed it right on top there on that one area title. Yeah, we're headed for some cost reduction in that. And I feel like you and I see trends that are coming this way: the AI integration, costs going down, and the transparency going up. And but your approach here with rebuilding new cities, well, this is just what we need to hear. I mean, America needs, in my opinion, to kind of grab grab ourselves by our guts and get back to where we used to be. Able to take chances. Especially with technology and making sure everybody has access to it instead of just the people on top. Um, anyways, it's a good time to be alive, I think. So,
Well, especially to be alive in New Hampshire. I mean, New
oh,
Hampshire already has a great tax structure and it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous up there. But it's
yeah,
not necessarily near a metropolitan hub where people used to go to be employed. But now people can be employed out of their home and have more
yeah,
leisure and
yeah,
grow
mhm,
sustainable food at home.
yeah,
So to be on Beacon Hill, like I say, where it always used to be the best place to be, but now knowledge is dispersed. And I believe
yes,
cities will be dispersed, and life is going to be a lot better without
mhm,
all, one
mhm.
thing you see is in these cities, what a lot of people don't realize is about 50% of the city is just blacktop. It's roads, it's
Gee,
driveways, it's
right,
basements.
yeah,
50% is blacktop. And do
yeah,
you think animals, you look inside, a lot of these cities, how many wild animals do you see? I mean, all you have is dogs, and all the dog crap goes right into the river, and it's poison. I mean, you
yeah,
can't
yeah,
even
yeah,
swim in the Charles River.
right.
You look at
Oh my,
Washington, D.C., the septic problem down there, that's what's
oh,
going on in America.
right,
Forget
right.
about Ukraine.
Yeah, take care of our own country first. um,
Amen.
yeah, this is so good. So, um, I'd like a short follow up here. I know you were looking for a good number of snippets, and yeah, I mean the your topic is right for it, and how you present everything out there is snippet worthy when you're speaking. So we'll do the best on our end. I don't want to cut off your sentences in the middle here, but you've got a lot of meat that you went into in this, and people need to hear it. So we'll do our job and turn this into smaller digestible snippets for people.
Perfect.
And then, yeah, if I could book a follow-up call, that would be great. I just want to make sure you're getting what you need on this. And this could work quite well with your book launch. And if there's not enough, we can do quick follow-ups here and provide you with more. Yeah, I could use a couple hours chat with you, Patrick. So
Well, that's what I say. It was, to be honest, I've never taken anybody off of LinkedIn, you know,
okay.
but I looked at your profile. This guy's going to understand what we're talking about.
Um,
He's going to bring something to the table.
I got to tell you, I have a background in the environmental work here. I have a master's in environmental education. I started
Cool.
out west at a retreat center put together by Greenpeace in the early '70s when I was quite
Wow.
young. Yeah, yeah, Rex Weiler and some Greenpeace veterans put that together, and we used to haul houses that were ready for demolition out of Vancouver and put them on a barge and bring them up there to the island and rebuild them so that they felt good, like so that they weren't ranch, old cookie cutter ranches anymore. Anyways,
Yeah.
my that's my background. It's environmental science, and you know, uh, if AI done right and transparency for everybody is going to lead to a healthier place for us to live, healthier planet. But boy, we got to watch it. And that's kind of why I got involved in AI too, because the people that own this country, they're bringing it to us. And so we've got to make sure that it doesn't tame us. We got to make sure we use it to kind of tame them. and tame the system that we got. Um, you're like a breath of fresh air. So I want to thank you for taking the time here, Patrick. Thank you so much. Um, we'll do our thing, and then I'll get a hold of you with the snippets. We'll also send you a copy of the recording, and look forward to chatting with you again. Perhaps next week sometime. Are you good? This is
Yeah.
mornings, like 10 o'clock, 11 in the
No,
mornings.
this is my full-time job, Bill. Shoot me an email. We'll get you in there. But
Okay.
this is the kickoff, and we got to get the message out. And you've got a following. This, in the book, I named like 20 people
Mhm.
that have enough money individually. One person can make this happen. There's enough money. If it costs $5 billion, and you know
Sure.
how construction is, that's probably a dumb number, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
But if we had, in one thing in the book we talk about is the 250th anniversary of America. If every state took one area and built a sustainable city, we had a contest nationwide that over the next 4 years, each state builds a sustainable city with local labor, with technology that we have today. There's not rocket science here, Bill. We've been building
Yeah.
shelter for millions of
Forever.
years.
Yeah.
We can do this if it's a focus. Okay, we are focused on a lot of different things, but we're not focused on America first. When you look at Detroit,
That's.
when you look
Mhm.
at Memphis, when you look at Chicago, it's a disgrace. And we
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
fix it. We
We
can
can
fix it.
do better, and we need to take it to the next level better, not just a little
Amen.
better here. Yeah. All right. Patrick, thank you, sir. Okay. So we'll get back to you right as soon as we can. I hope I'll get my team working on pulling the snippets out of this, and perhaps by the end of the day or tomorrow, I'll see what I can do to get them sent over. And then you and I can get together next week. We'll send you a Zoom invite for, say, Tuesday.
Tuesday's
Um,
good.
Tuesday's good. Okay, so we'll send you and take your pick of the times there, and we'll get together and put something together on this. And look forward to talking with you again. And hey, congratulations on getting that book out there. And let's get it spread as far as we can. Let's get some eyes on this thing. So,
I appreciate you, Bill.
you got it, man. All right.
All
Take
right.
care. Have a great day today. We got sunny days ahead here, so let's do our thing with it. And yeah,
5 weeks to spring.
there we go. It's coming, man. All right. Take care, Patrick. Have a great day,
Okay.
man.
You too. Have a good weekend.